You are connecting.
Hey, how you doing, man?
All right, got some sound. Sounds good. Thanks for joining today, or my evening. I realized this is
Yeah,
first.
mine
Usually,
too.
usually I have some nice like sunlight coming in, but it's nighttime, so I had to go to this horrible fluorescent light.
Hey, how's my sound? Is it okay?
Yeah, it seems to be coming in okay. So, when I'm doing international calls, I'm not too much of a stickler, and especially since I can use Zoom instead of Skype now, things tend to come out much nicer than they used to. So.
Yeah, definitely. Because I got a blue snowball. I just want to make sure it's picking up. Usually picks up pretty good at this level.
Yeah, I think that's I also do a podcast for sci-fi films. That's what my co-host has. I tried to get one myself, but it turns out my computer's too old. It like can't handle it. So I'm back to holding this microphone the entire time I podcast.
Oh wow, man, that's kind of retro though. It's cool. I like
Yeah, I
it.
do music. This is my music mic, so but
Oh, cool.
I guess we'll roll on straight into it. Basically what I do is do a short intro. I'll ask you to do like sort of the TV guide synopsis, although in this case it's your film, so I'm hoping that shouldn't be too much of an issue. And then
Sure. We're doing Twilight of the Archons, right?
that's correct, yeah. Although, well, I made sure to have these within hand reach of me too. So
Mm. I just want to let you know one thing. I've got to be off the call, so I've got about an hour and 15 minutes. Is that okay?
same here. I got to go read a book for the daughter at about the same time. So
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, I got a class. So perfect. Hour and 15. We're good.
okay, that's yeah. I try to keep these in under an hour, though I've been finding a few of them have been going a touch over that. So we'll see how it works out. But
Perfect. So we're good for time.
if you don't mind,
Great.
I'll just do my intro. I
One
should
thing, are we using the video or not?
that's up to you. I
Oh,
do post.
are you gonna use this like on YouTube or something? Or
I tend to post the raw video to YouTube. The podcast itself, I put some music at the beginning, do some editing, take out any
okay, yeah,
pauses. But if you don't mind me just throwing the video up there, um, as far as
that's
I know.
fine. Yeah, that's why I put on a shirt.
Okay,
I
groovy.
was thinking I should put on a normal shirt just in case.
Yeah, I went for this Japanese T-shirt here, but I have to stand up for you to see the rest of it. So that being the closest one, but yeah, I'll just get on into it. So I'll do that and do a little clap just so I can see it on the sound file. Welcome to Aural Hygiene. This is the podcast where we talk about educational films, experimental caught films, and interesting documentaries. This is Matt. Today we're going to be looking at a very interesting one of those documentaries and a little less vintage than we usually look at. This is a pretty new release. It's called Twilight of the Archons, and we have the maker of that film here today. It's Robert Bonomo. Hello.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
And I got asked, did I get the N and M right? Because I've been like keep flipping those.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
perfect.
good.
Like a real Italian, you pronounce.
I had some like social anxiety over that. That's why I podcast to get over my social anxiety. But um, like I mentioned, if you could just give like a quick like sort of TV guide synopsis of this film.
Yeah, I try and take a real broad picture of the current paradigm from a political and economic sense, and then also from a spiritual point. And in the end, what I attempt to do is bring it all together. So I just want to look at a little bit of sort of the technocratic view, worldview, say from Silicon Valley, a little bit look at money in modern economics. And then I bring in, I can just come out of the closet and say it's kind of an Advaita, non-dual sort of spiritual element. And then I try and bring them all together. At least that's what I try to do.
Yeah, and usually I go straight off. I try to be a good host, ask a question, and let you go for a while. But I actually want to go on not a rant exactly, but I want to talk about how I invited you to this one because it's kind of weird.
I was curious.
Okay, good. Because this will be a good way to start off. Then I was actually you've been on the higher side chats before. I was listening to their like sort of bonus show. So they had someone call in, and they were just mentioning, oh yeah, great documentary filmmakers, and they mentioned you. And I'm walking down the street. I think I was actually going to work, and I just suddenly got the thing like, you should invite this guy. So I did that. I looked up the film Twilight Archons. I'm like, okay, that sounds interesting. I invited you. You accepted like a day or two later, right? I'm like, what did I actually get myself into? You know, like I try to keep this like entertaining. I don't want to get like too deep into the weird, you know, like I don't want to like piss people off. I want to have some fun here, right? But you know, I watched a film. I looked it up. It's like it's about money, you know, the false truth of money and consciousness. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm down with that. I watched the film. I like the film a lot. And then I went back. You were on Tinfoil Hat recently.
Yes, yes.
I listened to it recently, regularly. I actually skipped your episode. It said like money is made out of thin air, right? I'm like, money, whatever. I don't want to do that now. But I went back and listened to it. It was a very good episode, by the way. It's just my apathy towards money. I enjoyed that. And then I went back to the higher side one. And here's the kicker. I listened to that and I was like, oh, I have listened to this before. And after I listened to that, I actually did watch the 3-hour 21 Faces of God documentary. And like a week after listening to that, I ordered this guy. So I'm like, okay, that's why
you've forgotten who it was. I see what you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, actually, oh, okay, it's real good. I did invite you because you did bring the tarot into my life. Well, we'll be talking more about, I guess, money and consciousness today. But I was like, it's just weird. Like I got that sudden urge to do the invite, and once I'd worked it all out, I'm like, oh yeah, this actually makes a lot of sense.
I appreciate your honesty.
Well, the point is, when you do hear that little voice just saying, do it, sometimes you should. I mean, you're in Tunis or you're in Tunisia.
Yeah,
I'm in Japan. I mean, I think both of us must have heard the call to just go do it at some point. So,
and actually, I had given up doing a podcast. Like I did a promotion, like maybe 2 months on the film. Like I did a bunch of podcasts on it, and then I just kind of gave it up. I even left and made a Twitter post saying, all right, I'm out. I've talked enough. But for some reason, I decided to do this because you came from the film part. And one thing about a lot of the podcasts I've done, people aren't that knowledgeable on film. And if you've watched the 21 Faces of God, you know what a film nut I am. I love film. So it's nice to talk to somebody who understands films, because there's a lot of references in that film. And also in this film, there's a lot of interesting film references.
Yeah, just on the film aspect, you started off with a clip from the Joker, which I started watching that, and I put in my notes. I'm just every time I see the Joker, it could be the best movie ever. I don't know, but I can't get through 10 minutes without just be like, I want to put on Taxi Driver instead. So that's my own personal issue, I guess. I put somewhere near the end. I do need to return to the International. The first time I watched it, I was like, there's a lot of financial stuff here, and
yeah, it's a terrible film. The International, it's horrible.
The thing
but Tom Talker made
Cloud Atlas,
the one that Kieslowski wrote. What was about heaven? The woman who's the terrorist.
Oh, maybe you're getting me on a different one. I'm thinking Cloud Atlas. He made that one with the Wachowskis, which I talked about recently.
Yeah, this was made by, I believe it's Tom Talker directed the International.
Oh,
he directed Kieslowski's last script.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and did he do Run Lola Run? I think he might have done that too. Yeah. Okay, there we go.
He did that, yeah.
Okay.
And so when I like that film because it's a Kieslowski script. I mean, when I watched it, I was like, geez, if Kieslowski had made this, what would it have looked like? So I went and watched the International. It's very flawed. But that one scene I used, I thought was pretty cool. When the banker kind of spills the beans. I was watching that film going, and then I saw this. And I was like, I got to use this clip.
Okay, the clip's good. It made me think I needed to watch the film again, but maybe I'll just take your word on that. So
yeah, the end is horrible. It's like they totally just went off the rails. It's a shame.
But that is our modern sort of, speech, right? I mean, we speak through films. I know when I was in high school, it was the 90s, and I remember for a year or two, me and my guy friends, at least, almost like exclusively speaking to ourselves in Simpson references. And if you didn't know the Simpsons, you'd have no clue what we were talking about.
Yeah. No, it's true. What did I use? I used an Apocalypse Now quote the other day, and it was so strange with a lot of like Gen Z millennial types, and it just went,
Yeah, I recently at my job.
Terminate. You know, remember the line where it says terminate his command, and then the CIA guy says terminate with extreme was it extreme discretion or something?
Yeah, that's right.
We had used that term all the time, and everyone was like, "What is he talking about?"
But yeah, I one thing, and I just did a podcast on here about a Star Trek episode, even though I have a sci-fi podcast. And at my work, I've suddenly become the old guy. I'm 42, right? So a year ago, there was a dude like 3 years younger than me. There's a guy a little bit older than me, but now it's like I'm 42 and everyone else is like 30 or under. So the kids don't get the Trek, except for the guy I do the sci-fi podcast with. But
What was your Star Trek main? What was the one that really got you?
it's hard for me to say if I'm a like original series or TNG guy, because my dad had me at 3 years old staring at the 60s episodes, right? I remember coming to him as a 5 years old because they had a promo just on the UHF station, like we're showing Star Trek this fall, and I was like, hey Dad, there's new Star Trek. He's like, that's not new Star Trek. 2 years later there was new Star Trek. That was TNG, right? So
same with me. See, I watched on UHF all the old ones, and then when New Generation came, I just loved it, man. I was totally into that series.
So I guess it's like it's hard for me to choose between the two, but obviously it'd be better to serve on Picard ship because he's not going to get you killed quite as quickly. But yeah, looking at your film, so I think you said you looked at my notes, and I went in there several times just talking about how much, like, I just don't understand money. I understand like what's in my pocket and it can buy things. I understand if someone hands me like a whole lot of money, like the next week I'm probably going to have like a Fender Telecaster or something. I mean, that's all I really understand. So it's like, am I just lazy? Am I stupid? Or am I just not like buying into the trap? I don't even know.
No, not at all. And like I've told the story a million times, but I think it's worth telling it again. I was working at a French bank in the marketing department, and I didn't understand money. I didn't know how it was created, but I started asking questions because I worked in marketing, so we have an acquisition cost per loan, and I was looking at the margin on the loan, and I'm like, we're losing money. And it took me years of asking, looking to finally understand what it is. And so it's not at all simple. People who work in banks don't understand what money is. So but I think it's curious that it's something we all want. I mean, sex and money are probably up there, 1 and 2, no? But we all know what sex is. You don't have to explain it to anybody. But we all want money, but we don't really, at its core, understand it. And I think that's curious. And that's why I put it in the film, because there's a mysterious element to it.
And I guess I'm cheating. I just told you I listened to one of your recent podcasts where it's basically, we always say time is money, money's work, but excuse me, I just said it, money is work, didn't I? I messed up my little metaphor.
You spilled the beans on me.
Yeah. It's I guess once you know it's hard to talk and the other speak.
But yeah, it is curious that it's. And have you ever spent any time looking into alchemy?
A little bit, I guess. For me, it's more like meditation, inner work. I bought in pretty quickly to like I don't want to mess with chemicals, and I did photography a lot in high school, right? So I burned my hands plenty there. I wasn't really too game to start exploding myself, but I'm like, okay, I can alchemize myself maybe. And so far, I said this on a cast a few weeks ago. I was like, oh yeah, my life's so much better now. But I'm like, well, actually, I have the same job. I actually have a few things in my recent past that sound quite horrible, but I'm like, oh, things are so much better now.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what, in a sense, medieval alchemy was. It was an inner transformation. When Carl Jung understood that, those late books by Jung were all about how alchemy is it took the Gnostic myth and modernized it. And for him, it was a major insight. But there is some connection between that idea of alchemy, of lead to gold, and this thing we have with money. There's some weird connection. That's why I put it in the film and put it next to consciousness. It's like when we understand one, maybe it'll help us understand the other,
And I guess
like the shadow side.
yeah, to play the game well, we're like, oh, save the money. I actually do have my, it's not my mattress Fenu embraced in my house, but I do have my little stash of whatever, just for what, basically just it's there, right? But it's like when you do have the money, it's like it seems use it, because if you keep it, it's just paper anyway. I mean, it's literally paper.
That's all it is. Just an
Where else?
IOU.
Australia, it's
That's all it is.
plastic, I guess, but
Yeah. Have you ever been to Vietnam?
you know what? Everyone in this house has, except for me. Oh, my daughter hasn't either. But my father-in-law actually worked. He was transferred there for a few years. So, and it was
Oh,
before I
okay.
met my wife. But they all visited, so they all have this Vietnam experience, and I don't. I'm from Atlanta. We have a very large Vietnamese community, and I've spent quite a bit of time in pho shops. But yeah, I haven't been to the country itself.
Oh man, I love this. Yeah, they have the most bizarre money. It's it's like I think it was 20,000 something. But I mean, you could be a millionaire with $100, so you got like $1 million. But I remember it was like this weird plasticky stuff that you could use in the stick it in the ocean. Yeah, it was strange. Anyway, just a random.
um, sorry, just this is change tracks a little bit. I'm a guy. I'm American sitting here in Japan, but I am curious how you did end up in Tunis.
Oh God, how did I wind up in Tunis? So I was living in Andorra. I was working online. Andorra is this weird little country between France and Spain, and I was really going bonkers. So I wanted to move to Barcelona. So I applied to a job in Barcelona, and they said no, but we have an opening in Tunis. So I said, okay, let me go, and I went. That's basically how I got there. Sheer luck, no
Yeah, same.
plan.
Yeah, it's sort of like I ended up in Japan. Just like I worked after I finished university. I worked a little bit away from home. I worked a little bit farther, a little bit farther. It's like, why not Japan next? And
Are you teaching or?
that's right. I do teach English. It's not quite the normal conversational English school. It's more like a high school, junior high, and elementary,
Oh,
like the cram school, right? But
right, right.
on the plus side, I do something that a lot of foreigners in Japan have trouble getting, is a permanent contract. So that was sort of the big thing for me. For me, like I don't really need to think about the next year and the next year. Money again.
Right.
They send me the paycheck. I try to make the most out of my day. I commute longer than I should. I actually walk extra train stations. I do a walking meditation. I listen to some podcast. I get exercise. My lunch break, my school's within. There's about 5 different temples nearby, so I usually just go there and do like kind of a Zen meditation. And
Oh, cool.
going home to do the same thing. I'll stop 1 or 2 stations early just to walk, listen to some podcasts, maybe count out my steps for a while, that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
I mean, they get my time. I work hard, especially on a Saturday, where I'll go like 6 straight hours without giving a thought to myself. But when I do have time to myself, it's my time, and I'll use it how best I see fit, I guess.
So you got really into the whole Zen tradition.
You know what's weird? It's more like I got into the temples.
Oh,
Most
okay.
of my actual meditations I got from just I might read like a book where most of it sounds mostly insane. It's fun to read, but it's out there. I mean, hey, it could be all true. I don't know. But then they mentioned a few meditations. I cobbled together some of those, made it
Right.
myself. Something that's fun. Last year, I actually got not kicked off, but at least bugged on the back steps of Zenkoji, a major Zen temple in Japan. I'm actually, they were like, you can't sleep here. I'm like, I'm actually doing a Zen meditation. Well, at least my Zen, but it had a procedure and all of that.
Right, right, right. I got really into to Zen for a while, especially those books by Suzuki, DT Suzuki. I remember when I first found those. I don't know, it was like a late teens. I found it fascinating.
I guess what was your trip in that sort of thing? For me, this was an earlier episode on this podcast. I live in Japan. There's you don't do drugs here. It's just like, if it's illegal, it's not on the table at all. You don't do it. So I'm like, but I want to
Oh,
have a
really?
psychedelic. Yeah, yeah. It's McCartney, right? He spent a week in jail for having a bag of marijuana, right?
I didn't know that.
But that's still
I didn't know
true.
it was
Yeah,
so
yeah,
strong.
yeah. Wing. It was like 1981, and Wings came to Japan, and he just had a little bit on him, and they put Paul McCartney in jail for a week, and then deported him for the next 2 decades.
A week. A week
It was
for a
I don't know
bag of
exactly,
dope.
but yeah, yeah. It was like 6 to 8 days, something like that. It wasn't like a nothing, right? So you don't
Right,
do
right.
in Japan. They have no moral compunction. It's just if it's illegal, it's illegal. You don't do it. So I'm an expat. I live here. I need to follow the rules of
The
my
rules. Yeah.
host country. But like me getting into meditation things was like learning. Oh, we have DMT in our heads. How can I get to use that? So I'm just like I want to trip out, and within a few years I'm learning Zen meditation. But I will say in the mornings, especially the daytimes for Zen meditation. The mornings you wake up, you maybe can get into the lucid dream state or something, and that is about as I mean that's more psychedelic than most drugs you could get your hands on anyway. So
And you spoke with Rick Strassman, I saw, right?
that's right. Yeah, yeah. Because that was where I went. I was like, oh, DMT in the head. Let's talk. I mean, years ago I read the book, watched the documentary, and when I started getting guests on this show, one of the first thoughts was, oh, I should see if I could get to talk to him about it. So that was kind of cool.
You've never done DMT.
Oh well, I've done the DMT and the pineal, man, but no, I haven't. I
Uh,
haven't. I haven't done DMT.
okay, okay. Now I had a bizarre experience with DMT because I always wanted to do it, and I was a big Terrence McKenna nut. And when I was listening to Joe Rogan talk about it one day, and I was like, I've got to do this. And I was living in Andorra. I had a week vacation. I checked, and there was a retreat in Barcelona. It's like a 2-hour bus ride. And when I remember when I was on the ayahuasca trip before the DMT, I kept thinking about no, this was in the DMT trip, right? I kept thinking, oh my God, Rogan isn't real. It's just this projection that got me here. It was so bizarre that whole got twisted into the trip.
That is what they do, isn't it? Having not
Yeah,
done
yeah.
that particular one, but but I guess just talking about your documentary is just so many things to get your mind on, and 90% of people have their mind just fixated on that next paycheck. I mean, I've gotten to the point where
Yeah.
I assume it's there, but I don't even check my statements anymore because I just don't care.
And in the film, I think I try and make the point that I use the money not as a metaphor for what maybe consciousness is. We think money is one thing, it's really another. And if you think about who you are, because they tell us this is what you are and what you really are, that's what I tried to do. Most people don't understand money, and when you explain it to them, they don't believe you. No, it's true. I'm like, what do you mean it's not real? Well, it's not. When they understand exactly what it is, there's an insight. And I think on the consciousness level, it's the same thing. We all think we're one thing, and then there's that moment when you go, wait, is it possible that what I've been told isn't true? So that's really where I use the money in the film. It's kind of a little bit of a trick, but I hope it worked. That people see, right, right. You see what I mean? Towards the end of the film.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, it just get the trap is so enticing because well again you show on television you flash your nice new refrigerator. For me, I as I mentioned earlier, you flash that nice guitar. I'm like, oh yeah, I need the money, but there's so many other things. I mean, how many satisfying moments of your life are coming from having a wad of cash in your hand? The most cash I ever had in my hand was handed to me by a manager who actually was paying me cash on the barrelhead. I could have run away with what did he hand? It's like $6,000. He wanted me to just go deposit, but I did that. I'm not gonna. Well, my friends work there too, but just like that's the most cash I've had in my hand. It was just in my hand. I was the delivery boy in that case.
Yeah, and and when we understand this, when we say, okay, it's work and it's a promise of future work based on all kinds of assets, I do ask one of the questions. And I think in the world today, there's a lot of social upheaval in the world. People are, it's just an unease, a general unease. And I think to get out of this unease, one of the things that's going to have to be resolved is this money issue. And one of the things, I don't try and give lots of solutions in the film, but one of the solutions I do say is, if money is work, what about the work of a mother raising a child? Why does that have no value in our society? In fact, she has to pay to raise the child. So you take a child, you educate him, give him value, language, give all these things to the child, and you pay to do that. But what if we valued that work? It would fundamentally change what money is, because all of a sudden she would be receiving pay money for her work. Is that work, does that work have value? I think so. It's pretty valuable work.
I'll take it a step on more though. You know, I'm married. I got a kid, just one kid. You know, I got you know, I got a friend. He's got two kids real close to each other. It's nutso time all the time, right? But
Yeah.
Other than that, not getting paid, there's this you know, the psychic stress, the mental stress on the mother. That's intense, especially if when you're not paying them for doing that. It can, you know, if they have a job as well, maybe it's a single mother, the psychic stress is like just that much more. I mean, it's like pay them a separate salary for that as well.
Yeah, and I know this isn't very woke, but let's face it, women, when we have children, generally women get the bulk of the work. It just happens. It's just the way it works. I mean, no matter where you go, that's what you see. So why can't we just accept? And from a career standpoint, look what happens to women's career when they have children. So when you look at the pay gap, has a lot to do with that period of having children. They lose out that time. So why don't we say, look, a woman has the child, we created an asset. So when the child is born, you could create $2 million, for example, put it in an account, and it's paid out to the mother. She can do what she wants with it. Imagine she says, I don't want to work. I want my husband to take care of the kid. Fine. Or boyfriend, whoever it is. Let her decide. But think about how that would change our values.
One layer is we all get the need. I need, and I had this as well. I need to get out in the world and, you know, make my own claim or whatever. So at this point in time, I actually live in a pretty generational household. Of course, there's practical things, but now I'm like, wow, you know, I'm very happy with how my daughter's growing up so far, right? You know, I live with my wife and my daughter, and her parents actually live here too. There is a family house in the countryside where there's a little detox space if someone needs to go over there, or they do the farming there. You know, my wife's sister and her family lives, you know, just like a mile down the street. So that support system is also important. And I know, especially in America, just from people I see on Facebook, nobody has that support system. You're supposed to get as far away as from your family as you can, and, you know, lay your claim and be your own man. But there's so much more just from having a family. It's like you don't need all that money. You need to have like a support system.
You know, I lived in China for almost 2 years, and it was incredible how the families really supported the young children. Because in China, I mean, it's really hard to survive on one salary. So just about everybody, you have, you know, both parents work really hard, and without the grandparents, it would be impossible. So I often think about it from an American standpoint. I'm like, God, how do American women do this without, in general, that support of 4 grandparents? So in China, you generally got 4 grandparents supporting the one grandchild. So there's always a way, I mean, that's a lot of support for a child. And in the States, we don't have that.
So, something else, at least in Japan, a little bit along those lines is it's pretty common that a new couple will actually build their house next to one of their parents' house. You know, like they do have that own space, but they're still like keeping things in one place. It probably also helps in Japan. People don't want to live in a house that someone lived in before. You know, I mean, you call it the Chinese feng shui thing, or just the idea that, you know, this family's lived here and their essence is here. So from the Japanese perspective, it's better to tear down the older house and just build a new one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. It's interesting. In Tunisia, what they do is, you know, more middle class families, people with a little bit more money, will build a house, and then when they'll often build a second floor on the house. And so it's almost general. You can have like it's sometimes a third floor. So you could have like the grandparents on the third floor, the parents on the second floor. It's kind of cool where you'll have really 3 generations living, but with separate entrances. You know, so it's pretty common, especially like in middle class families where you have some money and some land. You know?
Right. I'm trying to get my closest, connection to where you are. I think it was 20 years ago. I just took a trip to um, Portugal, Spain, Morocco. So I guess
Yeah.
whenever you're mentioned, where you are, I'm basically like putting Fez, Morocco as my mental picture.
Were you in Tangier? In Tangier, Morocco? It's a little bit more like that, right on the coast.
Oh, okay, gotcha. We did that. The idea was to
Yeah.
my dad had served in the Navy like in the early 70s. He'd been I think he was actually in Rabat, but yeah, he was basically, yeah, get out Tangier as quickly as you can, and then go somewhere else. And we went to Fez. So yeah, Tangier is a wild ride. I'll definitely say it was fun, but yeah, like I think we like either got swindled or just avoided being swindled about 3 or 4 times. Whereas Fez was great. Everything there was on the up and up. Like after Tangier, we got a someone offered us something. Oh, they offered us a restaurant. Like, oh, we'll show you where a good restaurant is. And we were kind of wondering if they were leading us into a back alley, but I'm guessing they were leading us to their like uncle's restaurant or anything. But that's fine. That's mutual help. So
Sure. Yeah, but Tangier has that. Yeah, I remember that element. But Tangier remember, it has like an Italian quarter. There's like a French quarter. So it's kind of a weird Mediterranean mix. That's the way Tunis is.
yeah, I have my blur vision going through a taxi through Tangier. Again, the goal, sharing the taxi, of course, right? We got on the ferry, we got a taxi, we got on a train. We're just by the regular ticket where we were on a overnight train with chickens and donkeys. That was pretty wild. That's the only night I think I actually literally slept with one eye open, more because I was afraid like a donkey was gonna like lick me or something. But and then getting disposed at the Fez train station at like 4:30 in the morning, because my girlfriend at the time, she was like, well, in Europe they'll stop the train for a few hours and then you'll show up at your destination at a reasonable time. But we ended up at Fez at 4:30 in the morning, sitting in a coffee shop for 3 hours and talking to someone. So whatever, that experience is actually quite worth it anyway. A nice comfortable trip there wouldn't have been the thing. You need the journey, right?
Exactly. You got to have a little bit of adventure.
Something I was noticing actually watching this is I've read a lot of Joseph Campbell, but I think this is the first time I've actually like heard him talk.
Oh, so you never saw the famous Bill Moyers interviews?
No, I've read all the books, but I haven't seen the interviews. So at first I was like, who's this guy?
You should go check out the Bill Moyers PBS interviews from the mid '80s.
Yeah, I have heard. I think there's a book based on those, right?
Yes, that was because what happened was, Campbell's story a little bit, right? That he was a professor for a long time. Never got his PhD, actually. He was just really technically a lecturer. Then he gave it up and did sort of like a speaking tour, went to Esalen. He kind of became sort of a popular intellectual. And then he got cancer. And before he died, he wanted to do that interview. Moyers wanted to do that interview with him. So it's really the last year of his life.
Okay. And
there's a book. It's really interesting.
I think I should watch that. I have read the book of that, but yeah. Another one I just mentioned was I think, did you mention Jiddu Krishnamurti in your documentary, or am I
which one? Which Krishnamurti?
Jiddu Krishnamurti.
That he's the one from the Theosophy one.
Right. Anyway,
right.
He's the one. He has very strict sayings, and I remember talking to a friend about him, and he's like, yeah, he sounds so like kind of affluent and hoity, and the way he talks, I'm like, oh, I've only read his books. He'd watch the videos of him, right, and seen that. I should mention, just for fun, I saved this from the dump, since we've been talking. I saved this from the dumpster last week. The portable young,
wow,
by Joseph Campbell.
That's excellent. You found it in the dumpster.
Well, it was the family house dumpster. I also saved the Cookie Monster puppet and Lotso bear.
Oh,
So yeah, they were doing spring cleaning, but they went a little too heavy on things. So you don't
yeah,
throw away
that's yeah,
the
don't
young
throw.
book.
That's edited and that's edited by Campbell, right?
Yeah, yeah. So just two things
Okay.
we've mentioned so far. Um, Something I want to try just for fun to see how the topic goes in honor of the 21 Faces of God and so forth is I'll say I guess I cleared the cards by playing along with Good Vibrations and then one of my own songs too, before we did it. So I'm just gonna flash a card, and in
Mhm.
terms of the documentary, let's see what that brings about. I'll flash the card in the screen, and I have no clue what it is or if it's upside down or right or right. But okay, what do we have?
Oh, the
We have
King of Pentacles.
yeah. So I guess I'm just gonna get real zen and say, does that make you think of anything?
Yeah, yeah, the King of Pentacles. When I think of the King of Pentacles, I think of a man who it's definitely a masculine card, but it has a touch of a feminine quality to it. Is is somebody? It's luxury. It's abundance, and
Okay,
it's a
that
good
could be.
feeling. It's a
That,
nice. It's a feeling when you can kind of sit back, relax. It's not the active male energy. It's sort of the relaxed male energy. It's a nice
okay,
card. It always
I
makes
should
me. It's a good card.
I should hope that's what we're doing now. So that's fun. Let's try one more just for fun. And when teaching, by the way, I tend to use cards a lot. I use regular playing cards. I'll do like blackjack and like this is
Mhm.
how this decides which student is asking a question or whose turn it is. That's all I'm doing. I did it because I had students that were so quiet. I was like doing this like chills them out and makes them a little happier to talk. So you've been very talkative and very fun to talk to, but it's still kind of a fun way to go about it. So let's
Yeah.
see what comes up. Let's do one more and see what comes up.
You got the Queen of Pentacles. Can you
Interesting.
turn
That's
that
the
on?
next one. Okay, because it was from a completely different part of the deck, and
That's a happy
inverted as well.
marriage.
Okay,
That's
so
definitely a happy marriage.
okay, that's cool.
You got the
I
King and the Queen of Pentacles.
Yeah, interesting. I came up with this too. So I actually I don't do tarot readings that much because the last one I did for someone, and I don't do them professionally. I'll pull out the instruction and go pouring through them. It doesn't look like I know what I'm doing at all. But the last one I did just for my coworker turned out to be like way too accurate. So
Really?
we did it. It was like last June, I think. And okay. I had a bout with cancer last year. I had like lymphoma in the face. Stage one, not too bad. It was like the Disney ride version. Like I had to go in the hospital for a few weeks, but I never really felt particularly bad, right? He got
Oh
hit
shit! Of
harder than
course.
me. He got hit harder than me. And with the same thing, like 2 weeks later, it's like insane. So
That's weird, isn't it?
totally weird. Yeah. And I'm going to his house tomorrow. I'm actually going to do a few episodes of this podcast with him. He's doing better now. But I gave him this reading and we were like, it was supposed to be for him. And we are like, oh, is it for COVID? There's like the sickness and you come out at the end. And it's like, it seems like maybe it's just COVID. Maybe I got it like too broad. But then it's like it's a year later. I'm like, wow, that was kind of weird. So but one thing is I don't I feel like the tarot, one of the reasons I'm flashing you cards here is I feel like it's better for not predicting the future so much as just opening different, pathways of the mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when people come to me, I won't do general readings for people because you can really mess with people's minds. And
In
this
your
is
own.
not woo woo. This is just basic psychology. You can get a horrible reading, and the person's like, "Oh my god, what's going to happen?" So I like to give people a choice. But the key to tarot, I think, is look, if you could predict the future with tarot, I would be on some island in the Caribbean. You can't do it. It doesn't happen that way. What it does is it flashes stuff to you, like with your friend. You know what I mean? It's just like it gives you these flashes, and those synchronicities are what Jung once asked. That one definition he gave of God was the synchronicities in life, the meaningful coincidences. And sometimes when you're reading, you get more than the person who's the querent because you see those flashes and it's just wild. No, it gives you this this strange connection to things. And it's really always about the moment.
Yeah, I mean
And it
that's
never answers the question directly, ever.
that's kind of why I started off by telling you how I invited you to this, because it was just so many weird synchronicities and just a sudden flash. Oh, why don't we do this and see what happens? I mean that's as efficient. Of course, in the East here we have the I Ching, so that's of course
Yeah,
a fun one as well. And I'll throw this one at you if you've heard of this. I like to make music, and there's a musician, Brian Eno, and
sure. Yeah.
he made his oblique strategies cards. The idea being it's kind of like an I Ching. You just flip.
Hmm.
Actually, I'll grab my phone. So the idea is you're making a song. If you're like Brian Eno, you have no clue what you're going to get in the end. You just start working on it. So
Doesn't he have that weird album Airport where it's
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, ambient, yeah.
ambient music? Yeah.
So that's yeah, and he did albums with David Bowie this way. So I got an app on my phone, right? I don't have the cards itself because well they're
Hmm.
expensive. I live in Japan, so let's say I'm making a song. I go to this. It gives me an instruction. Let's just take it. Let's say podcaster music. What is our next instruction? Make a sudden, destructive, unpredictable action. Incorporate. Ah, that's the best I had. Okay, you know, but
Yeah, that's and you write music that way.
well, in terms of music, I had a song I hadn't added the bass yet, so I decided to use that. It said, "Play something simple." So I made the bass line just one note, rhythmically interesting, but just one note through the whole thing. Did I make a bad track? I don't know. That's not for me to decide. But the creation of it, there's your alchemy, right?
Yeah, yeah. And there's a famous atonal composer who actually composed the whole thing was done that way, purely random.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm getting the right one. There's a Schoenberg's 12 tone. The idea is you have 12 notes on a scale. You have to use every note before you can return to the next one.
Maybe that's what. Yeah, that was that. Because I remember you listening to that. Honestly, that music for me is hard to listen to. It gives me it makes my brain. But I know a lot of great musicians are really into that stuff. But for me, it's difficult to listen to.
No,
I think it's more of an intellectual exercise when you really understand music. Then you see it means more to somebody who really understands. I don't have that deep understanding, so
I don't like Schoenberg, to be perfectly honest. I appreciate that, and I do. Okay, there's one time in life I definitely always use Schoenberg, which is a group singing of the Happy Birthday song. I won't sing it here. I won't sing it here because it's copyrighted. But when everyone is singing Happy Birthday, I will just sing well, I can do it because I sing random notes. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. I'll just like sing random because no one notices. I can sing well, but yeah,
Right.
I'm hitting the notes, but I'm just like I'm yeah, I just bounce around, and occasionally someone actually notices I'm doing that. And what are you doing? But that's the way I sing the birthday song. For me, a lot more resonant is getting towards that ohm sound. There's a Steve Reich doing minimalist music, Philip Glass, like
Yeah.
it's way more minimalist, way more repetitive, but so is a chant or a drum beat. So
Yeah.
even
Yeah. Sure.
Beethoven, one of the weird, Beethoven, like classical, right? Like totally, classicist, all that. But one weird thing about Beethoven is he gets away with repeating things way more than any good composer should get away with. He'll go like 34 bars of the same thing. Maybe he changes an accent, but like that's technically bad writing. But in his case, it's genius and it's transcendent.
Yeah. I have noticed that sometimes with Beethoven. I was like, wow, man, he's really sticking to the theme here. It's not.
And if someone needs something just to go straight for that, go for the Pastoral Symphony, the Sixth, where he literally goes 2 minutes just with nothing changing. It's just a river going down the stream, a river going down the stream. That doesn't make
I
any sense.
personally, and I'm not an expert on music, but for me, Bach has aged better than Beethoven. I
Well,
think.
before I play Good Vibrations, I'm also a cellist, and I did get through the first cello suite before
Oh
our
my God.
podcast. So I only didn't play the second because it's kind of a humid day here, and the cello just wasn't working out well with the atmospherics, and my hand was hurting a little. And it's like, okay, the first one's fine for today. I'll do the second and third tomorrow, maybe. But yeah, Bach is the weird thing. Again, I know you're saying you're not a music guy, but Bach is all intellectual. It's intellectual, like reaching for the transcendent, but his own
And he gets
personalities.
there, I think,
He gets
sometimes.
there. Oh, he gets there sometimes.
Did you
But
notice I used the cantata? I used that cantata for in the scene where the guy's going into the cement.
I'm pretty sure I made a note about that somewhere. I think it probably said something like, "I played the cello
As
suite
as
earlier
as he
today."
comes down into the cement. It's that famous cantata, I've had enough.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's Lorraine Hunt. She's the Canadian soprano. It's that when you listen to that, it's just wow.
yeah. So
Good. When I finally got to his cantatas later on, I remember thinking, "Oh my God, this guy wrote 350 of these."
well,
When you think of it,
it was his day to it was his 9 to 5, wasn't it?
and I think half of them are lost, got burned or something. But when you think about his how much music he made and the quality of it, and what's interesting about him was for a long time they considered him the um, of the box. He was the one who was the performer, and the son was the composer.
Yeah. It was 100 years after he died before he really got to be known. Mendelssohn did
Yeah,
some of his works, but kind of the other side of the coin. So yeah, that perfect bop music, Bach music is absolute perfection, right? But none of his personality is really in there. He was stumbling around with gout
yeah,
in his later years. I mean, he was a grumpy dude. uh Beethoven's personality, especially in his later periods. So he started off like, at his most depressing point in life. He did the second symphony, which is like super happy. He was about to kill himself. He has a super happy symphony for you. But once you get along, the big revolution with him is he felt the need to put his own personality in the music, which at the time was unprecedented. And
yeah.
it's good you mentioned Bach, because was that a bad decision? Is it better to express yourself or reach for the transcendent?
Yeah, it's like, it's like the bat flip, Beethoven started bat with the bat flip. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, because when you think about that romantic period, it really does begin with the end of Beethoven, though, some of it.
Yeah.
So sometimes when I get in one of those Beethoven moods, I almost feel like I'm being a little self-indulgent. Did you ever get that feeling sometimes with Beethoven? You're like, is this getting? Am I? But with Bach, I never get that feeling. It's just
No, there's famous. I think it's a Dudley Moore sketch where he's playing piano and ends his. I wish I could plug it in here, but he just does that. He's doing the Beethoven ending, and it takes him like 5 minutes to end it. So that is self indulgent, and it's completely accurate for a few of those works. But just to flip it back toward try and twist this a little back towards your documentary. Bach was super obsessed with his paycheck. He wrote some like nasty notes to his employers. His employers liked him because he was artistic, but they didn't like him because he was stingy, and he got
yeah,
paid in beer. That was just pretty hip for a guy writing hymns and cantatas and stuff. But that was a
yeah.
man who did he counted his coins. I guess it's earlier than the Federal Reserve sort of systems we have now, but he made sure every coin was counted, and he used them well.
And how many kids did he have? He had like what, some ridiculous amount of kids.
Yeah, a lot. Sorry, I don't have a number for you, but he had a lot. But he was such a worldly man. He had horrible gout. He got grumpier in his later years. You had to pay him in beer, and he was going to count the rest of the coins. And at the same time, we have the most transcendent music possible. So
Yeah, yeah. And I think that we have to, especially with music, I think you have to separate those two. I'm not sure how much Bach's personality really matters.
no, it doesn't. That's the whole point. Beethoven too. You do not want that man over for dinner. It's not going to be a good
Yep.
time.
Definitely not. No.
You know, Keith Moon's going to throw your television out of your house, right? So you don't want Keith Moon over for dinner, but he's a fantastic drummer, you know. So you do have to separate these things. Which again, I love the Doors, but then there's, you know, if you get down all the rabbit holes, oh, his dad was Admiral Morrison, who was commander of the Bay of Tonkin, and what's going on? It's like I still like the Doors, you know.
I know. And I think a lot of people in certain sectors get a little carried away with that. You know, I mean, when you see, I tell friends of mine, if you see a conspiracy everywhere, that means there is no conspiracy, right?
Yeah, it's like, yeah,
The whole thing is a conspiracy, then there is no conspiracy.
If Paul McCartney's been dead since 1966, well, I like the other guy too. It's fine. I mean, you know, rest in peace, original Paul McCartney in that case. But hey, the other guy was pretty talented too, so I can live with it. You know, it doesn't affect. I guess the thing to get riled up about conspiracy is, does it affect my life? You know, that's the whole round Earth, flat Earth. It's like, yeah, it's real interesting. It's real interesting to assume maybe we've been duped, but you know, it doesn't matter to me at all.
Yeah, that is one of the most fascinating. If I was writing a PhD today, I would write it on the flat earthers because they fascinate me. They absolutely fascinate me.
Yeah, I like the monsters. I guess I'd have to go for Hollow Earth in the end, but yeah, the flat Earth one's cool too.
Do you know, in the 21 Faces, I use a globe. There's one thing where the Earth becomes an eye right at the very end, and I had flat earthers saying, "Yeah, great film, but you know, the Earth isn't round." I was like, okay. I mean, it's like it gets that crazy.
It's like, did you like the image? You know, I could show you like fantasy lands and fairies, and if it looks cool, we don't really have to worry about if those fairies are real or not.
And you never know. I was doing just a show once, and we finished, and the guy's like, "Yeah, and the flat earthers," and I go, "Yeah, aren't they bleeping out of their minds?" He's like, "What do you mean?" And it totally, you know, like, you got to be careful with that. But what causes that? This is what's interesting. Why do people want to reject that idea? Which the Greeks figured that out. You know, you stick a stick in the ground, and you know what I mean? The Greeks figured that out. So why is there a need to reject it, and why are so many people attracted to it? That's what's interesting. And if you look at, for example, the whole corona thing, and you look at it and you say, the scientists on one hand, have they stopped doing science and have they crossed over into dogma? With corona, on a certain level they have. There's a certain lack of just scientific discourse. And there's a connection there. There's a connection there between our relationship to science, scientists, technocrats, and people's rejection of that. And there's some truth in the rejection. The thing is, when you take the myth for real, you get confused, you know? It's like eating the menu.
Yeah, I mean, with Corona, here's my thing. One, I live in Japan, where people are basically like, okay, we already socially distanced except for Tokyo trains anyway. When people get sick in Japan, when they were actually sick, they would put on masks, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't. So the only real change for me has been, okay, I'm at work, they want me to wear a mask. When I walk into the store, they want me to wear a mask. When I'm walking around my rice fields from station to station, right? Literally, you know, I'm not going to, because there's nobody around me. There's no reason to, you know, and yeah, and I try to keep this podcast entertaining and not bring up vaccines. So I'm not even going to tell you anything about that. I don't have to think about it. I've been told by my doctor, don't get one this year because you had chemotherapy. I'm like, okay, I don't have to think about it. That's reality stepping in.
All right, do you mind if I just ask you just one thing though, because my wife has the same issue with the chemo.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did he say do not get the vaccine because of that?
She well, my doc, I think it was partly because it is somewhat experimental. I mean, if you get it and you're like, let's take one for your team and see what happens, and you feel good about it, it's your bag, right? Do it, you know. In my case, the doctor was like, it's a little too experimental. You need to wait. So if it's summer and they offer you one, tell them you need to wait a few months. She's coming from perspective like, oh, you want to get one, you need to get one. So, but you need to wait. But I'm like, okay, well, that basically means I don't even need to have an opinion about this at the moment.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a really difficult issue. People who've had cancer with the vaccine, because there's a lot of, it's confusing. And a lot of doctors are telling her, don't do it. But we
Yeah.
actually need it for travel. She needs it for travel. So it's a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, I'm just in a situation where I don't leave my valley, or
Yeah,
I haven't for quite a
you're
while.
lucky.
I haven't been out of Japan since 2010, but I mean, yeah, eventually my work's gonna be like, hey, we need you all to get it, and we'll see what happens. If things haven't gone horrible by then, you know what? It's probably fine. I've had my time to see it. I didn't have
Yeah.
to be first in line, and I don't have to be like I was selfish by not being first in line. Things from the universe came in mind, and I just got this chance to see what happened with everyone else first. There's no politics, there's no believing science, no not believing science. This is just the reality of the situation. That's how it came around. So that's how I'm going to play it.
Yeah. No, but it's actually a really difficult situation for people who've had cancer when you look at the vaccine, because my wife's a research scientist. She's a bacteriologist and all this stuff. So the science is an issue, but we're looking for paper studies. Should we, shouldn't we? And it's not easy because
Because
it's very confusing. It's
I
incredibly
mean,
confusing, even for people who have a scientific background.
I'll cross my
Mhm.
fingers a little bit. Hopefully, for 99.9 of the population, no problems. But it might be in 2 years. Like,
Exactly.
hey, if you had this condition, this actually was like a really bad idea. We just don't know that yet. So again, everyone I think literally everyone I know in America has had their 2 doses now. So, but Japan is, I think we're at 7%. We're really dragging our heels in Japan.
Yeah.
But
What's
again,
the story with that? I don't understand that.
yeah, especially with the Olympics, you'd think they'd just want to
Right.
like,
That's
start
what
like,
I thought.
doing like dartboards at people and get it into everyone, right? They're stepping up the game now, but yeah. So one thing is Japan wants to make its own medicine. They want to have their own vaccine. They don't want to use someone else's.
Right.
Like
Right.
any medicine you get in Japan is typically the Japanese version. Like if I get aspirin, it's the version. Well, I actually, if I take ibuprofen, but it's from the Japanese company. I don't get the American version here, so I
Right.
think
Right.
that's part of it, which I think's good. That's Japan covering itself, being like, hey, if we do make a mistake, at least it's our mistake. So
Oh, I see. And so there's not there. I thought there's not a Japanese vaccine yet.
there's not. So that they're importing
Oh,
them, but they're rolling them out real slowly. Now, that could be because of bureaucratic insanity. Japan is very good at that. It could be from, the pharmaceutical companies lobbying. If you did want to get super conspiratorial because they know, man, which I don't. I should mention I don't. My tact is to not believe in anything. I think I put that in my notes too. But I don't believe in anything. There's a few things I know, and a few of those things I know are pretty wild. But if I don't know it, I'm just not going to believe it. I'll think about it. That's why I do this podcast. I can talk
probably
about
the most
whatever.
underused phrase in the English language is "I don't know."
Yeah, yeah, and that is a weird thing in Japan because I'm a teacher and you're really not supposed to say I don't know. But if I don't know, well, that's what I'll tell people. So,
I
but
mean, I teach. I'm a lecturer, and I'm always trying to push them to that gray area. I'm always like, explore the gray where it's really you don't know. That's where you get interesting writing, interesting ideas. You
yeah,
know.
yeah. I mean, honestly, I think this is the first on-air like vaccine conversation I've had. I've talked about it like off air, but it's like, but the point is, I mean, someone's gonna probably get annoyed because I'm like, I don't know. Is it good? Is it bad? Well, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I haven't been involved in any studies. I have no personal knowledge of this. It could be the best thing ever. It could be like the worst thing that's ever happened to us. I don't know.
And that's like totally where I am. And I have a necessity, like, my wife needs to get this. It's going to help us with travel issues. And, you ask people, what should I do? And unfortunately, most of the doctors say don't do it because of the
But
cancer.
yeah, and again, that's
Because,
what I've been told. Yeah. So at the end of the year, I think I have been cleared, and at that point, if everyone knows okay, and well,
yeah,
maybe it's fine. So I got this selfish well, selfish by way of having cancer, benefit of not having to worry about it at the moment. So again, in your case, there's the travel involved, but well, I'm only traveling in my mind, man. and the 50 kilometers to get to work. But I do take, again, I have a long train ride, which I enjoy. That's where I do most of my book reading. Sometimes I start making music on my iPad and finish it up with real instruments later, that sort of thing. So, you know.
I used to have a long commute on the trains, and I still get sort of nostalgic for those hours of reading.
Yeah, I
love-
would
I-
not be happy without my train time. I like my train time.
yeah, I remember that. You get
That's
that
what,
book, and it was just like, oh, it was great. Yeah.
yeah. And to be honest, sometimes it's a video game, right, on my iPad, but it's often books, it's often creating, you know. So again, people complain, oh, I have this long commute. I'm like, well, I think I make the most out of my commute, plus video games. So um I guess we should be wrapping up because I know you have some things to do and places to go. But can you tell people about your work and where to find it?
Sure. If you go to thecactusland.com, it's all there. Um, Now, if anyone is interested in the 21 Faces of God, there's a small problem now that YouTube, for copyright reasons, has cut out the section on the archetypes. So I had to mute it. If you really want that section, contact me and I'll just send you the link. But it's a shame because it's one of the most interesting sections in the film. It was actually the most popular section because the film, I put it the long form version and then the 27 sections. The section on archetypes, if you send me an email, I'll send you the link. But it got blocked, unfortunately. So
Okay, I had the pleasure of watching, I guess, 2 years ago. So I did see that segment. Yeah, I got that one. But if I want to rewatch it, I guess I'd need to get back to you on that. And Twilight of the Archons is also hanging out on YouTube, unedited at the moment, at least.
Right. It's still there, except for it's been blocked in North Korea, Iran, and Syria.
Okay.
I had 6 videos blocked in those countries. You know what I think is happening? This is just somebody I think is buying the rights to music just in those countries, waiting for some point when those markets will open up. You see what I mean? It's like buying real estate that for the future. It's strange, but all of these videos are getting blocked just in those countries. I don't know why.
It's weird. I made lots of albums over the years, and there's one I actually tried to like properly like get distributed, right? I can't use it. If I put in this podcast, in the podcast it's probably fine, but if I put it in YouTube, I'll get flagged for music that I wrote with my friend in Tokyo, but created, like there's no played everything, and I'll get flagged for it. Just I sold the soul of that music, which is kind of sad.
Because somebody owns the rights, right? Somebody else owns the rights to it.
Yeah. I can put it on like my Bandcamp because I put that when I said it. But if I try to use it for a video or anything, I gave it to a friend once. It got flagged. I used it myself. It got flagged. I'm like, so yeah. Be careful what you do with your content. I guess is the bot. Be careful.
That's so funny though, isn't
it? Because I'm a prolific idiot. I've probably recorded like 30 albums. This is one album, but it is one of my favorite ones. So it's a bummer. I can always enjoy it myself. I can't, like share it in podcast form anymore or anything like that. So
Did you ever listen to Rick Beato's YouTube channel on music?
Does that have a name?
I think it's called Rick Beato or something. He talks about he's a musician, a producer. So he'll go into why a song is great and look at the music of it.
Yeah. Okay.
He has some great rants. I mean, just like he'll play like the harmony to a song that gets flagged. And he goes nuts.
So yeah, I should probably look into that. There was there was another one recently. It was like tonality or something. It was kind of interesting on those lines. I mean today, hey, the topic was Twilight Archons, and we went on Bach and Beethoven for 10 minutes, which that's cool. That's the whole point of.
I love to talk about Bach.
Yeah, that's the whole point of this podcast. So again, I reviewed a little bit of the past appearance and actually listened to the tinfoil one. I'm like, hey, we didn't repeat much material there, so I guess that's why you came in for this late date interview. Hopefully.
Yeah, sometimes it's fun just to rip, what's going on.
Right. As for this podcast, it's Aural Hygiene Pod at Twitter, Facebook, places like that. I'm still old enough. I hang out on Facebook for some reason, but Yeah, the music I've been making is at rovingsagemedia.bandcamp.com, and this podcast, our sci-fi podcast, some other ones about like Pokemon and Monster Hunter, not mine, but if that's your bag, listen to them. Or at Podcastius at Patreon. We do preview ones. I actually will be posting this raw audio up to that probably later tonight, though I won't be posting the podcast itself for a few weeks. So anyway, Robert, it's been very groovy chatting with you this my evening, your morning. How hot is it?
I really enjoyed it.
What's the temperature there?
Oh my God, today's gonna be about 32.
Okay. Well, you actually, I was rocking 30 here a few days ago, so I guess it humid. You have a dry one, I assume. Is it dry? You're
Well, I
by the
mean, since
sea.
I'm in Tunis, I'm right on the water, so I'm right
Yeah.
on the water. So
Yeah,
it
that
gets
that
a little
changes it.
humid.
Okay. See, in Japan, I'm in the mountains, which I used to live central, like much lower by sea level, and that was just like the gates of hell living there. So there was a corner on the way to work when I worked there. And I was like, this corner is this must be the hottest spot on the earth. It wasn't, but it did get up to 40 one summer day there, which, yeah, which. What is that? What is that for the Yankees down south? I'm from Atlanta. That would be 100.
Times 2 plus 30 usually works. So that's
Okay.
like 110.
Okay,
Pretty
yeah,
hot.
yeah. I'm up in the mountains a little now, so my summers are slightly more, moderated, but then we get a lot more snow. But we had the
Yeah, I
one.
got to ask you though. So are the Olympics going to go off or not? Is it going to happen?
2 weeks ago, I was definitely joking to my wife, like, when are they going to call it off? They seem a little more steeled now, but the public opinion in Japan is going more or less against it at the moment. Public opinion doesn't
Wow.
like it. They've had major business leaders say don't do it, but now we've had, Biden's like, yeah, go ahead. The World Health Organization's like, go ahead. Of course, the IOC wants it to happen, so I guess they're going to push this thing through. They even started talking a few days ago about actually letting some domestic spectators come in, which was off the table a few weeks ago. So I I don't know. Again, with Japan, it's hard to tell what they're doing or what they think here. I, I
I
think
think
real.
now, because in Europe now we've got the Eurocopa going on.
Yeah, yeah.
It should have been 2020, but it's going on now. That's where the countries play. It's like the World Cup just for Europe, but it's
Yeah, I
really
saw that.
big
I
there.
saw that yesterday. I was like, 2020 World. Oh, what?
Isn't that weird? I know. I was looking at it. It's like what? But they still call it for some reason. They call it 2020. But I think because that's going off and people, television wise, I think it's going to be pretty big. I think it's a good sign that the Olympics will probably, or
Yeah.
they'll probably do them.
I have two cellos here. I have a acoustic one that's a loaner to me, and an electric one up here. And last year, when the Olympics first went off, I actually got for on sale the little mascots for the Olympics and Paralympics, and I put them onto my cello cases just because I was like, I want to put a lost cause on here. So, but hey, maybe it's happening in the end.
Yeah, it'll be cool. We'll see what
Okay.
happens.
Well, I know you have some things to do, so we'll cut you off for your time now. But it's been very groovy talk to you, and of course, people you didn't talk about your film much, but people should watch it. And again, I told you many times I could barely care about money, so that I guess came across in our chat. But yeah,
And just remember, the film is mostly about the other things, but it's a part of it, but it's not the whole thing. So,
it's the hook, isn't it? That's the hook that most
yeah.
people would get, and then it will lead you to those other things. Because yeah, again, for me, exploring consciousness is way more satisfying and anything than money could be. I know some of the Indian masters have been like, I have my spiritual pension, I don't need money. So which is a intense thing to say, but especially if you don't have food. But hey, seemed to work for them. So okay, have a good one then.
You too, man. Take it easy. See ya.
Okay, bye-bye.